My name is Kathy, a 40-year-old professional employed in an office setting, primarily handling clerical tasks. I share my life with my husband, Bob, who is 3 years my senior and also works alongside me at the same company. Despite our decade-long marriage, the pitter-patter of little feet has yet to grace our home, as we haven't been blessed with children. From the onset of our union at the age of 30, there was an unmistakable urgency within me to embark on the journey of parenthood. Both Bob and I harbored a deep desire to expand our family. While the ticking of the biological clock is less pressing for men like Bob, I couldn't shake the feeling that my window of opportunity was closing by the time I reached 35. Physically, I'm not particularly robust, and I yearned to navigate the trials of childbirth and raising a child while I still possessed ample energy. Yet, despite our fervent wishes, reality hasn't aligned with our hopes. We embarked on the quest to conceive immediately after exchanging vows. But alas, the telltale signs of pregnancy remained elusive. So, we made the decision to undergo testing at an obstetrics and gynecology clinic. The results revealed some challenges on my end that made conception difficult. It wasn't a definitive no, but the odds were stacked against us, and the road ahead appeared steep. Bob, understandably disheartened, voiced his disappointment, questioning his ability to become a father. Witnessing his anguish, I found myself at a loss for words. Despite the discouraging prognosis, we persisted, clinging to a glimmer of hope. Yet, despite our efforts, the stork never visited our doorstep. I attempted to uplift Bob's spirits, reminding him that our life together was still rich and meaningful, even without children. He nodded in agreement, resigned to the situation, murmuring words of acceptance. However, over time, I noticed a shift in Bob's demeanor. Casual encounters with families strolling in the town or visiting colleagues with children triggered a noticeable change in him. He would wistfully muse about the joys of parenthood, expressing a longing tinged with envy. I couldn't shake the feeling that deep down he couldn't reconcile himself to the idea of foregoing fatherhood, and this realization left me unsettled. Gradually, Bob's demeanor towards me began to cool. During her attempts to conceive, he had been actively involved in household chores, cautioning me against overexertion for fear it might hinder our chances of pregnancy. He had always been the first to offer, "Let me handle that," whenever there was heavy lifting required, and his caring nature made him a thoughtful husband. On weekends, he willingly assumed the household responsibilities, insisting, "I'll manage these since you handle them during the week." However, once the reality of our infertility set in, his attitude underwent a drastic change. "I'm exhausted, and isn't household work traditionally a wife's duty?" With this declaration, he resigned himself to idleness on weekends, spending his time either dozing off or glued to his smartphone. Suddenly burdened with additional chores, I found my health beginning to falter. When I fell ill with a fever or stomachache, his response became callous. "Figure it out yourself," he'd retort, showing no inclination to lend a helping hand. I remained silent in response. After all, it was undeniable that my infertility was a significant factor in our struggles to conceive. Contemplating the possibility of divorce weighed heavily on my mind, particularly at a time when I believed our relationship was on a positive trajectory. Then, unexpectedly, a change occurred in our circumstances. Bob received a transfer offer, a significant career opportunity at one of the company's affiliated branches. The catch was that it required relocation across state lines. Naturally, I assumed we would relocate together, but to my surprise, Bob suggested otherwise. "You don't have to come. I'll manage on my own." His words prompted me to pause and reflect. Perhaps his distant and indifferent behavior towards me stemmed from the frustration of our infertility. Perhaps a temporary separation would offer him the space to process his emotions, and in turn, pave the way for the restoration of our harmonious relationship. Agreeing to his proposal, I bid him farewell as he embarked on his new journey. His visits home became infrequent, occurring only once a month. Even during these brief reunions, he would swiftly declare his need to return, citing pressing obligations. It became a familiar pattern, but each time Bob returned home, even if just for a brief visit, it brought me a sense of happiness. I reasoned that if he truly harbored disdain for me, he wouldn't bother coming back at all. Yet, in the wake of his solo relocation, Bob underwent a gradual transformation. Initially unchanged, he gradually softened. He started surprising me with souvenirs, expressing, "I got something for you. Enjoy." He even made time to accompany me on shopping trips, despite his busy schedule. His concern for my well-being was evident as he regularly checked in, asking, "Is there anything on your mind?" As Bob's initial one-year assignment stretched into 2 years due to project delays, a noticeable shift occurred. He ceased making any allusions to our inability to conceive. Instead, when encountering families with children, he remarked, "Though we couldn't have children, I've come to terms with it." His acceptance brought me a sense of relief. 2 years later, as his assignment concluded, Bob returned home. "Welcome back. You must be exhausted. I've missed you. Finally, we can resume our life together." With a semblance of tranquility, we resumed cohabiting, but our peaceful routine was swiftly disrupted. Upon his return, Bob broached a startling topic. "There's a young relative in my family who recently had a baby out of wedlock. She's unable to care for the child on her own due to her youth. Would you consider adopting the baby?" His proposition caught me off guard. Stunned by the suddenness of his suggestion, I queried, "What's prompted this?" His response was candid. "Given our struggles with conception, I propose we adopt and raise this child as our own." Overwhelmed by the gravity of his proposal, I requested time to mull it over. The conversation was left hanging as I grappled with the unexpected turn of events. Yet a nagging feeling gnawed at me regarding the veracity of his account. His family resided a considerable distance away, and our interactions with his relatives were sparse at best. Our relationship with them was so distant that annual Christmas cards constituted the extent of our communication. Having skipped a formal wedding ceremony, my acquaintance with Bob's relatives remained limited. Reluctantly entertaining the notion of adopting a child from a virtual stranger, I expressed my reservations to Bob. "Could I meet the child's parents? I'd like to understand who they are," I ventured. His response was unexpectedly firm. "Why does it matter? Why are you so fixated on that?" In my view, knowing the child's background and the reasons behind the decision to relinquish parental responsibility was crucial. I pressed Bob for details, only to be met with resistance. "The father ran away, I heard. Stop prying into their affairs," he snapped, visibly agitated by my inquiries. Feeling a sense of incredulity and frustration, I couldn't help but voice my concerns. Taking in a child from complete strangers isn't a decision to be made lightly, I countered sharply. His reaction was swift and startling. "Enough. If you're not on board with this, then it's over between us. Leave right now." His words rang out, revealing a stark truth. It seemed his desire for a child eclipsed all other considerations. I began to feel as though my presence was inconsequential to him, a belief that slowly solidified within me. Sensing that I had reached my breaking point, I made a decision. "Fine. I'll gather my things and leave," I declared, swiftly packing my belongings and departing our home that very day. With no immediate destination in mind, I sought refuge in a motel close to the train station. The divorce proceedings with my husband proceeded smoothly, facilitated by legal intervention to sidestep any potential conflicts over alimony, property division, and related matters. Deciding it was best to distance myself from the workplace where my ex-husband and I had once toiled side by side, I tendered my resignation and secured a position at a small law firm, leveraging my computer proficiency and administrative assistant certifications. Adjusting to my new professional environment took some time, but I managed to find my footing, navigating each day with a semblance of tranquility. Accustomed to the solitude of my separate existence for 2 years, I had grown accustomed to returning to an empty abode. Then, one fateful day, approximately a year into my newfound independence, my ex-husband unexpectedly appeared at my workplace, cradling a small child in his arms. His surprise at encountering me was palpable as he exclaimed, "What are you doing here?" "Why wouldn't I be here? I work here. It's rather evident, isn't it?" I replied, puzzled by his reaction. His complexion drained of color at my response. Intrigued by the child he cradled, I guided him to my supervising attorney's office. There, an unsettling revelation emerged. Sir, I've been harboring doubts about the paternity of this child more than a year ago. The resemblance is non-existent, and I question whether the child is truly mine, he confessed. The supervising attorney, adopting a pragmatic stance, inquired, if the child isn't yours, what course of action do you intend to pursue? Divorce, naturally, he affirmed. Legally, disputing paternity must occur within a year of the child's birth. Even if a DNA test confirms your suspicions, you may still be liable for child support, the attorney clarified. What? Surely you jest, he retorted incredulously. I assure you I'm not. There are legal precedents set by the Supreme Court, the attorney maintained. As I recorded their exchange as a clerk, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. It became apparent that he had engaged in infidelity during our marriage, resulting in the birth of a child. Considering the timeline of events, the child was conceived around a year after he had embarked on a business trip. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, I couldn't shake the realization that his recent kindness might have stemmed from a sense of guilt. It appeared that his current wife was a former colleague of mine, and each time he interacted with her, his gaze would inadvertently shift towards me, his expression betraying a hint of pallor. Given the circumstances, it was only natural. After all, his ex-wife, the woman he had attempted to leave with the child born of his affair just a year prior, was right there before him. In the end, he reluctantly conceded, "Very well, I'll undergo a DNA test and then reassess the situation." With those words, he departed, his demeanor subdued. Later that day, I confided in my lawyer, Mr. Williams, regarding my divorce from the previous year, which coincided with my ex-husband's unexpected return. Surprised by the revelation, Mr. Williams offered invaluable insight. You're aware that you can seek alimony for infidelity within 2 years of its discovery. What are your intentions? He inquired. Without hesitation, I affirmed, certainly, I intend to pursue it, from both him and his mistress. Then let's initiate the necessary procedures without delay. Thank you for your trust, Mr. Williams concluded, setting the wheels in motion for what lay ahead. Ultimately, through the legal expertise of my lawyer, Mr. Williams, I successfully pursued alimony from both my ex-husband and his current wife, who had been his mistress during our marriage. To prevent any attempts at evasion, I ensured the alimony claim was delivered not only to their residences, but also to their workplaces and his in-laws' residence. Shortly thereafter, I received a call from my ex-husband. What's the meaning of this claim? He demanded. It's an alimony claim for your infidelity. We're already divorced, but that doesn't exempt you from your obligations. I replied firmly. That's absurd. There's no way I'm paying alimony, he retorted. Actually, you can claim alimony for infidelity within 2 years of its discovery. Considering our divorce was just a year ago, your infidelity falls well within that time frame, I explained calmly. Suddenly, a woman's unfamiliar voice interjected, instructing him to alter his tone, and she took over the call. What's the meaning of this claim? She demanded sharply. Caught off guard by her abrupt intervention, I inquired, May I ask who I'm speaking with? I'm his wife, she declared. In the face of her unexpected demand, I remained steadfast. You're both legally liable for this claim. It's not negotiable. It's only fair to seek alimony when I've been wronged, I asserted. Listen, he told me he was single. I had no idea he was married when we started seeing each other, she defended. I'm not interested in your excuses. Regardless of whether he lied about his marital status, the fact remains that you had an affair with my husband. I'm entitled to compensation, and our child will require financial support as they grow, I responded firmly. But we can't afford to pay such a hefty sum of $40,000, she protested. That's not my concern. You both have jobs, and he holds a respectable position. I don't believe finances should be an issue, I retorted. You should know that because of that claim, he was demoted and received a pay cut. I was also downgraded from a full-time employee to a part-time one, resulting in a decrease in my income, she countered. We simply can't afford such a hefty amount, she exclaimed in a state of panic. In that case, perhaps you should ask your parents to cover it. I will relent. I insisted firmly. I refuse to pay a single cent, she shouted, and her husband returned to the phone. My wife pleaded, "We're going to face severe financial difficulties. Could you please reconsider dropping the claim?" "No, I won't drop it under any circumstances." "On another note, I have something to share," I interjected. "What is it?" he inquired. "Do you recall the fertility test we underwent a few years back?" I prompted. "Yes, I do, although it turned out that I had an issue." "Wait, are you saying I had a problem too?" he exclaimed in disbelief. "Yes, that's correct. Both of us were diagnosed with issues, but I chose not to disclose it at the time because I didn't want to upset you. I still have the test results. Would you like me to send them to you?" I offered. "It's a lie." "It's all lies," he muttered, likely overwhelmed by the revelation. The shock seemed to have left him unable to process anything else. To be honest, when we had our fertility tests, the doctor did identify a significant issue on my end. However, it wasn't just me facing challenges. Bob had his own issues too. The doctor made it clear to me both of you are facing difficulties, so conceiving may prove to be a challenge. Kathy, this isn't solely your problem. Upon learning about my issue, Bob was so stunned that he abruptly left the doctor's office before hearing the full explanation. Initially, I intended to keep this revelation to myself, but I realized there was no reason to continue hiding it, so I disclosed the truth to him. "Just now," he muttered, clearly struggling to process the information. Sensing his agitation, I decided to end the conversation. "Let's leave it at that. I have things to attend to," I said before ending the call. Subsequently, I managed to secure a total of $20,000 from each of them for emotional distress, totaling $40,000. While she was reluctant to pay, it seems Bob assumed the entire financial burden. Later, it came to light that Bob had arranged for a DNA test for the child. As feared, the results confirmed that the child was not his. It seems that Bob is contemplating divorcing his wife, but the prospect of paying child support and emotional distress compensation to her has left him financially constrained. Consequently, he feels compelled to maintain his reluctant marriage with his current wife, who was his former affair partner. His recent demotion further restricts his financial flexibility. Surprisingly, the reason he wanted me to raise his child with his affair partner is because she is known to be quite strong-willed. He confided in me during his visit to pay the emotional distress compensation, admitting that if he gained custody of the child, he intended to fabricate a reason to end his relationship with her. Lately, tensions have escalated between him and his wife, resulting in a strained atmosphere at home. Moreover, their reputation at work has suffered due to their past infidelity, making his professional life challenging. Meanwhile, I have settled comfortably into my single life, finding contentment in my routine. I have exciting plans to travel with my friends during the upcoming holiday break. Despite being alone, my days are fulfilling with work and the companionship of my friends.